Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. Hello and welcome to Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. I'm Thos, which is something that actually everyone can say, but is very rarely true. Well, we continue with our previews of the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, that most exciting time of the year. The Fringe, of course, is the biggest arts festival in the world, and so much of these shows, which you can see up there, are musical theatre. And that's what we're concentrating on. The clue really is in the name of this programme, Musical Talk. If you've got this far but we're expecting something else, then I'm sorry, you've made a mistake. It's not our fault. We take no responsibility. We take no responsibility at all. In fact, we're irresponsible. Well, today I'm talking to fellow Musical Talk presenter David Kingsmill. If you may remember, he first came to our attention with Hitler, the musical, which went up to the Fringe and was a big sellout a few years ago. And of course, he's done a lot since then. Well, he's returning to Edinburgh this year with both a Speechmarks straight play and a musical. And during the course of this conversation, we'll hear a bit about both, but we'll be concentrating on Out of the Lens. So, why not start with a piece of music? I can think of no good reason, so we're going to do so. Here's a song from David Kingsmill's Out of the Lens, and then after that you can hear the chat I had with him about his shows.
Distant, you are so very distant. I have never met a man quite so oblivious as you. There is a world out there, a world I would display, and there is only one simple thing you have to do. Look up and see the world I want to show you. Look up and let me take you by the hand. I'll throw the doors wide open that keep you locked away, and you'll see the horizon where you stand. There is so much waiting for you, and it all depends on me getting that head of yours out of the lens. Gentle, you are so very gentle. You just need the courage to step forth from darkness into light. I can see it in your eyes, a yearning to explore, and I can promise you new adventures every night. Look up and I will lead you off the pathway. I'll take you to a place you do not know. This is just the start of your illumination. Allow me and I will begin the show. No one said that this was easy. Everyone pretends, and yet it's just a single step out of the lens. I know that you want to, but it's just that you're afraid. But tell me, so next time it's not so hard. The day that one admits they're hiding, that's when he ascends. and welcomes what he truly is. Out of the lens.
Musical talk. David, always interesting and always lovely to see you.
Our pleasure, sir.
And you're dangling before me the tempting tidbit of a new Edinburgh show with the name of David Kingsmill attached.
Indeed.
So that's not the name of the show, incidentally.
No.
So come on, you're going to Edinburgh this year. I think for the full run. Is that correct?
For the full run, yes. I'm taking 2 shows up. Neither one is there for the full run. One goes up for the first 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and one goes up for the second 2 weeks.
So there's some overlap.
There is some overlap. There's a nice week in the middle where I can do tons of cross promotion, which never hurts in Edinburgh. Tip for anybody who's going up for the first time. But yes, that's not so relevant for this because it's a play. But the show going up for the second 2 weeks is most definitely a musical.
And does it have a name?
It does. It's called Out of the Lens. Which
immediately conjures up some ideas. You know, forgive me, I may be completely barking up the wrong tree here, but you automatically think film or camera.
You do.
And you think musical, and suddenly my mind's going back to 35mm, the photographic exhibition show I saw up in Edinburgh last year.
Yes, with Mr. Michael Riley, in fact, who I interviewed recently about De Profundis.
The excellent Michael Riley, the musical director of many a show.
Yes, and I believe it was the same, that was also Katie, who directed The Last 5 Years, which I also spoke about. Yes, so nice little correlation there. Yes, you're quite correct about cameras. It is about a photography student called Joseph. He's doing his master's and basically has blanked. At the beginning of the show, he has no inspiration. He has deadlines, three assessment deadlines coming up, and absolutely no idea what he's going to do with it.
Photographic writer's block.
Yes, exactly. Just because it's not, I mean, obviously any photographer can take a picture of anything and make something of it, but you need to make something meaningful if you're going to do a portfolio, which is what this is intended to represent. And he's sitting in a tea shop bemoaning his situation, and in walks Ryan, who is a homosexual dilettante.
It has been known.
I believe so, yes. He's living off the goodwill of his parents, who are separated, and neither one realises how much money the other one is giving to Ryan. So he's
playing off one against the other for monetary purposes.
Well, pretty much, although he's not really doing much with it. It's just happening. They're not in the show, by the way. This is a 2-man musical, so Ryan and Joseph are the only 2 who are in it. Yeah, he comes in and he lives his life to cause mischief, basically. And he sees Joseph sitting on his own, sort of decides this is going to be a bit of fun, and goes and sits next to him and says what's going on, and they end up that they go to the park, and Ryan starts posing for Joseph for some photographs to do a portrait series, except he starts taking it a little bit too far. He starts taking his top off, being a bit suggestive, and Joseph panics. And
I take it Joseph's character isn't gay?
He is not gay, no, he's straight. And they finish up. Joe stops the photo shoot when it goes a bit too far and says, but actually I quite like this.
Yes.
These are good photographs, maybe we can do something like this again. At which point Ryan says, well, why don't I help you broaden your horizons a bit, which is something Joseph wants to do, and tries to take him to a gay bar, but Joseph realises where they're going at the last minute and bolts. But then they have this developing friendship where Joseph says, well, actually, come back, let's have some more photographs, let's try this again. And you get this weird development where Joseph's actually oblivious to really what's going on. He doesn't realise he's actually returning the come-ons a little bit, because he just doesn't think of it. Whereas Ryan's actually getting very confused as to how he's feeling about this, because he's usually just mucking around and having fun and sleeping with random guys and causing havoc in others.
But rarely is there a genuine friendship in his life.
Indeed,
clearly,
and he gets a bit confused by all of this. And to leave the little cliffhanger, they don't actually realise where things are going until it blows up. And there's a big falling out in the middle of the show, and where it goes from there, you'll have to come and see it to find out.
Of course. But that's a very interesting... I mean, that touches on various things which I suspect a lot of people have come across, which is certainly when you're younger, when love seems to be a much more important thing in people's lives, in a way. Or rather, the power of love. I don't want to sound like Huey Lewis and the News, but you get the idea. I know there are other songs with the same title, but by other singers, but Those of us who remember Michael J. Fox's Back to the Future, that will always be the power of love for us.
Absolutely.
But the power of love, in fact, is almost overwhelming. It's not a subtle thing. It's a full trumpets blasting kind of thing, and you're looking for it. And you can misread signs in friendships. Mm-hmm. Many a friendship has been ruined by a misinterpretation.
That's happened to me.
Yeah.
I think that's happened to a lot of people.
I don't think that's an uncommon experience.
No.
So I take it they are both. Well, obviously, one's doing a master's. They're both quite young.
They are, yes.
Yeah.
Joseph actually states at one point in time that he's 22. Ryan is much the same age.
Yes.
They are intended to be young, early 20s.
Yeah, young men, in fact.
Yeah.
Absolutely fine. Well, forgive me, that's a very interesting idea. So, are you the writer? What's your involvement in the show? Because you're not performing, are you?
I am not, no. I'm stepping back from performances this Edinburgh, which people will be very glad about for the play, for certain, because that would be totally unsuitable. I could have potentially put myself into the musical, but I decided I was going to step back this year. So I am book writer and lyricist. I have also co-written the music. I started writing the music for this show and realised writing a musical, a play, and all the music for the musical simultaneously was suicide.
A bit much.
Yes, which I'm very good at taking on, but this time actually recognised it. And so I pulled in my friend Nick Chave, who listeners will probably recognise that name as being my co-host on a few Musical Talk episodes. So I've written 3 songs in the show, and he's writing everything else, but he's also doing the arranging of the show. So
right, okay.
Even though I have written some stuff, he is blending it in, much as I did a few years ago when we did the devised piece Hitler the Musical that I took up. Yes. We're doing the same thing. He's melding that to make it sound holistic.
It's the secret art of the orchestrator, amongst everything else. It's not simply just orchestration, it's making coherent and cohesive.
Yeah, absolutely true.
Funny enough, in a recent conversation I had with somebody completely different, we were talking about the role of Jonathan Tunick in the work of Stephen Sondheim.
Right.
And and the question is, how far is a Stephen Sondheim sound actually the Jonathan Tunick sound? So that role is, I think, always vastly underestimated. So
I think it's very true. The difference that's been made, there's not massive changes to the pieces that I wrote, but they are there. And there's even a couple that I've written where Nick has said to me, I'm not sure that's working, so I've written something new, and then he's moulded it again.
Yeah.
And actually those changes are substantial, because if the two of us wrote our own thing in separate rooms and crushed it together and put it on, you would be able to tell.
Yes, the seams would show.
Yeah, very much so. And I'll be very interested to see if anybody... and I've challenged my best friend to do this as and when she comes to see the show, to actually say which songs I wrote. And I actually don't think it's going to be very easy.
Oh, I might play the same game.
Go for it. You know my style.
I do, but don't tell me that. We will talk about the score, but don't tell me which ones are yours or
I won't.
Or Nick's. So it's a one-act piece.
It is. Yeah,
fine.
45 minutes.
Fine. So it's the standard sort of hour slot in the
Absolutely.
in your booking terms. That's fine. Let's talk about. What's the name of the play, just so that we can talk about.
The play is called So What If I Dance?
Oh, jolly good. Which you might have thought would be a musical with the title.
Yes, absolutely.
You've turned these around a bit, but just so we can clarify one from the other. So you've been writing both of these things slightly in parallel,
yes,
or at least with a view to them being performed.
Yeah.
What made you decide to do a play and a musical, and how long have you been sort of brewing these up?
Well, the play, actually, I've been brewing since the first year I went back to... I did Edinburgh when I was 16, but that doesn't really count. But so 2011, when I went up with Hitler and Not So Far to Reach, I went to... so the play is about a lap dancer. The aim of the play is to sort of cast a true look, if you like, at the life of a lap dancer and what it's really like. Because I think one of the problems that the adult industry as a general thing has is that it is mostly its own voice.
Yes.
There aren't many people who speak for it in other media. Now, I went up to Edinburgh in 2011, and there's actually a strip club that becomes a venue.
Oh, is it?
Which was called the Sapphire Rooms. It's rebranded now to Club Rouge Cabaret and Show Bar. And they put a photography exhibition on, ironically linking these two pieces in a way that I have only just noticed. But they put a photography exhibition on of the girls that worked there, and there were a few photographs, of course, of them at work, as you would expect. But there was also a lot of black and white photography that was showing them outside the club in their own lives, buying something at a supermarket, putting their lingerie in a washing machine in a laundromat, something, whatever it happened to be.
Living.
Exactly. And it was actually originally an initiative by the girls to combat some of the media that they come into. Yeah. And they come into a lot of bad press.
To de-objectify them. Presumably.
Exactly. Yes. And that's precisely, ever since I saw that, I've wanted to do something along the same lines, and that's where this play came from. Now, how long have I been working on it? It started coming out probably in about July, August of last year.
Oh, right. Okay.
I wrote it the first draft of it with no research, because this is a very difficult demographic to talk to. They don't trust a young man who asks to have coffee with them.
I can imagine.
Whatever the reasons are,
Yes.
because they, it's a natural,
Yes.
sadly, a natural assumption that there's an ulterior motive, I think.
It's a very understandable defence mechanism on their part.
Indeed, and that's one of the reasons. The conversations I've had, both with them and with other people, as I've been writing this piece, have justified for me writing it in the first place.
It's because they've been objectified.
Exactly.
Yes, their only defence if they can't have a voice is to just walk away or close down. I suppose, yes, fully understood.
But I got a lot of help with this, and I finally managed to interview. I actually spoke to a burlesque dancer originally, which is a different. It's part of what people categorise as the adult entertainment industry, but it's a very, very different kettle of fish to a lap dance or a strip club, and it would be a great misnomer to categorise one as the other, but they face the same prejudices.
Of course. Yeah.
So I got a lot of help there. I eventually managed.
Parallels, but once again, yes.
There are. I managed to speak to some of the girls at the Scotland Club. The owner was very, very helpful to me there. And I got in touch with a doctor of sociology, I believe, or a reader of sociology at Leeds University, who's actually just done the UK's largest study of lap dancing. And she's been sort of making sure that that I'm accurate.
Yes.
And actually, what scared me is I thought I'd gone too far, and I'm actually quite accurate.
Oh, well.
Which is slightly depressing, but also, I'm glad I got it right, and I'm glad I'm representing something truthful.
Which is what you were aiming to do, of course. So
Yeah.
in fact, actually, you have met your own objectives.
I think so. So that was finished first. The play was actually theoretically could have gone on stage about 3 months ago, as we talk now at the beginning of July. The musical started. Well, I started writing something completely different, which is an idea I'm saving for another occasion, because I wasn't sure at the time whether I was going to be in Canada now or not, and I was originally writing a show that involved 2 children as actors, and I realised organising something like that from a distance was going to be a nightmare.
And impossible, pretty much. Yes.
Probably. So I've shelved that, and I was trying to work out. I wanted to write a musical. I was determined to get one down. I didn't work for 4 months in Canada because my visa expired, so I stayed put as a tourist and couldn't work. So I was determined to get a musical done. And somewhere I just thought, right, what you know. I've been listening a lot to a musical called The Story of My Life, which, if you've never heard of it, go and listen to it. Funnily enough, Jonathan Tunick orchestration.
Is it really? Interesting.
Yes.
Sorry, very sidestep. Does it sound like a Sondheim, or does it sound very different?
No, it's very different.
That's interesting. It goes to show his versatility, which might have been not fully appreciated, I think.
Very true. I think he's not too much known for his work on Sondheim, but I think his other work is perhaps lesser known.
I think that's very fair. I wouldn't be able to tell you another show that Jonathan Tunick had orchestrated until now.
No, fair enough. Well, there you go. The Story of My Life. Check it out. It's a fabulous, fabulous show. Another 2-man musical, actually. And I think that inspired the scale. And also there's this big thing, it's about a writer, and there's this big thing where one of the characters keeps saying, write what you know.
Yeah.
And I thought, what do I know? I know the hardship that people face, I know photography, and I know how to write a challenging story.
Yes.
And that came out. And because I'd been working on this play, and listeners will appreciate now, having heard what it's all about, I had very much in my mind the idea of first impressions, of motivations, of prejudice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and actually that's where this story was born out of.
So this musical is informed by the play.
It is.
Although it's a different subject entirely.
Absolutely.
Maybe the sensibilities are similar.
Yeah, well, as soon as I started researching the play, I started coming across completely unrelated displays of prejudice, of victimization, of ill treatment, and of course once you start looking into the adult industry, you start uncovering a section of the homosexual population that doesn't talk as loudly as some other sections. And hearing them talk and hearing some of the specific problems that they came up against, I think that probably filtered in a little bit.
How interesting.
Now, I mean, I will say there's a little bit of me in both of these characters, a lot more in the photographer, I think, because I share a lot in common with him. I'm also straight, so there's obviously a dissociation from Ryan at that point. But I think it's very, very easy once you start hearing some of this to sympathise and empathise with what's happened to these people. And I thought, well, there's a story right there.
It's all part of the human condition, after all. But sometimes in areas where, as you say, the light hasn't always been shone.
No. So in terms of this, I guess I started writing in about December. And that had already had 4 months of working on this play. And so I took that. But there is in no way are the two related.
No.
Except in those themes of prejudice and motivation and so on. But that you would never go to one and sort of... That's why I'm not cross-promoting them on flyers. I want the flyers to be for 2 separate shows because they are.
They're quite discreetly separate, but as you say, there are thematic overlays and overlaps. Can I ask, forgive me, the musical?
Yes.
There's a character, as you say, write what you know, and you say you've got a certain amount of affinity with the central photographer character, but you have written a character who, from my own experience of you, sounds very different to you, which is the slightly more capricious, mischief-making friend, I'm going to call, just for want of a better phrase, or someone who becomes a friend. How did you draw that character? Because that's, it is very different from. You have empathy and sympathy, and so you fully understand the human condition and your experience in the world. So, I mean, obviously, all those things would influence you on that. But having drawn one character so clearly from life,
it's a very, very valid question. There's a couple of things I think that contributed towards that. He was actually meant to be a substantially darker character originally. He was meant to be quite sinister. And he's turned out being more misguided.
And charming, I'm guessing. Because
he is quite.
Yes, it must be his charm that allows him to get away with the mischief in the unseen adventures in his life that have led up to where he is at the beginning of this play.
Yeah, he's good looking, he's shameless, he's willing to go out there, but he also has the right attitude. I mean, I would say he's quite manipulative, but I'm not sure all of it's intentional. I think he's just, it's certainly not in the case of his reactions with Joseph, maybe with others.
But he's damaged too, I rather think.
But he's damaged too.
Be, yeah.
And the other thing I think that informed it was that he was the opposite of the character I'd already written.
Oh, right.
I wasn't trying to write the opposite of me, which, bearing in mind the comments we've made, could be understood. That's not what I was trying to do at all. But I thought, Joseph was fairly fleshed out in my mind, and the essential thought was, what would he not understand?
Yes.
What would catch him completely off guard? And
where are the holes in his experience?
Yeah, and that's where Ryan came from. Joseph says he wants to broaden his horizons. He wants to try doing something different. And initially I meant that photography-wise, and then I realised, well, hang on a minute, there's a character.
Yes, but also, one is a symbolic step towards the other as well, isn't it? Yeah, it's quite.
And so who would test him? And Ryan's character came out of that.
How very interesting. Having written this interesting character piece, it sounds to me.
Hopefully so. I believe so.
You then, obviously, it was always envisaged as a musical?
It was.
Yeah. But you had originally intended that you would be the composer and lyricist throughout.
Correct.
So, let's talk first steps then. You've fleshed out your story in your head. You've worked out where the songs ought to go. You know where your nexus points are plot-wise. But how did you approach it? I suppose what I'm trying to say is, where is the symbiosis between writing the score and the piece itself? Did you write and always know there was going to be a song at X point and therefore start concocting the song at the same time, or did you write the story first, work out where the songs go, and then have to redraft the story and plot? And was it done step by step? Look at the music, look at the book, then the score, and then obviously the score in some way would require some changes to the book, so you change the book again, and then that may require. Was it like that, or was it all homogeneously done?
No, I've actually written it what would probably be described as being very badly, I don't
think there is a way of doing it badly unless the end product is bad.
Well, perhaps this is true. Inadvisedly. Which is that I decided the songs I wanted, and I wrote the songs, and the book didn't come for quite some time.
Oh, right.
It was in my head.
Yeah.
And I was plotting. I knew what the scenes were going to be, but I didn't know what they were saying. And I knew that there was one problem for the characters, not for me.
Yeah.
There was one problem that crept up during the process of writing the work. But prior to that, I knew what the major stepping stones were going to be, if you like. And I could kind of make an educated guess from that as to where the heightened moments of it would be. Okay, this is a song I want. I want a song of this style. Let's have a go. And so I wrote all of the lyrics for the songs. I had half the lyrics written probably before I came back to England, so I wrote most of those in December, and then I came back to England in January, and I've written a couple of bits and pieces before I got Nick involved, and I think there were 2 songs left by the time he was on board.
So you clearly write your lyrics before you write your music?
Most of the time. Occasionally I will get a piece of music and I'll work with it. So the song that's in the middle of the piece, which is not the climax of it, but the fulcrum just before that, was written simultaneously.
Oh, right.
But that was written because I wanted to play with a particular musical idea, and the two just kind of formed.
It's kind of waking up and realising that I can do X and Y at the same time, and it will work. Yeah.
Absolutely. Sometimes I write a melody with the songs, with the lyrics. Sometimes I write lyrics and then try and force a melody onto them. The problem is that makes it harder.
Yes, of course.
Because if you find your melody wants to go somewhere and the lyrics don't allow it, then you're trapped.
Yes. Or you need to start again and save that melody for something else.
Yes. Well, and this is where, like Nick and I, we've had the inevitable cases where something I've written doesn't work for what he wants to do. And so there have been rewrites, there have been lyrics removed. Never more... I think actually the biggest change was there was a verse added to a song that didn't feel like it had enough verse structure.
So almost in a way it helped emphasise the contextualisation of the piece, which
yes.
is what a verse essentially does.
Yeah, absolutely. And then once the songs had been written, the book came out after that. I started writing it when, Nick was still working on the music, so I didn't have all of the music, but I knew where everything wanted to go.
You had your nexus points.
Yeah, and a couple of adjustments as we went along, and it seems to have worked out. I've got some critique coming of the libretto this evening, actually. I've given it to a script writing teacher to have a look at, because I've never written a libretto for a musical before. I've written cabaret dialogue, but that's always been fairly improvised, and certainly stream of consciousness, whereas this is obviously a lot more thought out. So we'll see what happens.
I'm very interested in this sort of relationship between you and Nick also, as how that would work. I mean, forgive me, when he started writing the melody for the songs that you had handed over to him, did you still have a connection, or did you just give it over to him sort of wholesale? Or how close was the working relationship?
Well, a lot of the time when if we're doing stuff that involves both of us, we will work at his house, and so I will hear what he's doing.
Oh, right, I see.
I may even pitch in.
So it's a physical proximity.
Yeah, I've given him like a couple of ostinatos or patterns, and he's taken them and turned them into something better. He's done something and I've tweaked it, but I haven't really done much. The only minor surprise was I'd written 2 songs before I gave it to him, and actually there was one song neither of us could work anything out, and it turned out that I wrote it.
Oh, right.
Which wasn't expected at that point in time, but I came up with a random idea. We were both sitting there, he's got 2 keyboards. We were both sitting there trying to work out what on earth to do, and something suddenly came out. But that's the greatest contribution I've had to anything since I gave it to him. I am involved. He will send, if I'm not there, he will record ideas for 10 minutes, just noodling around, and then send them to me. But he is his own master, and he has written, there's very, very little. All I've done is maybe suggest something that I would do, if you like, which helps that moulding of making the whole thing sound like we've both put into it.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, he's his own master. He's done his own thing, and what he's done is he's made this piece a lot more musically complex and arguably structured.
Oh, right,
because my songwriting technique is, does this chord sound nice after this one? Yes, let's use it. Whereas he says, I've played this chord, what would functionally work next?
Oh, right, so in a way, however, that's that works very well, because, forgive me, how shall I say, you have creative intuition, and he has technical... That's not to say you don't have technical knowledge, because I know you've been very highly trained.
And equally, he's got plenty of intuition.
But when it comes to composing and creating, people have different... some people use structures in order to build organically, and some people just say, whoa, I've had this idea, and off it goes.
Well, it's like you say you're musically driven or rhythmically driven or lyrically driven when you're singing a song. That's not to imply you can't do the other things. There's just one thing that tends to dominate slightly.
Yeah, if it didn't, everyone would sound the same.
Exactly. In my case, it's my gut. In Nick's case, it's his technicality. And I think what it's done is it's made for a much more complex and involved show that sounds an awful lot better than it would have been if I'd written it.
So when would you say... I mean, you were working on this after the play.
Yes.
So what period are we talking in terms of just pure chronology?
Well, lyric writing in December onwards. The music started... Actually, I started writing one song before I returned to England. But, I mean, we've been working on it on and off fairly solidly, basically since the beginning of the year.
And when would you say it got to a point where you knew that it was going to work? And, when did it sort of coagulate into something that was going to be it? When could you start thinking about casting and the production difficulties? Because there's always production difficulties.
That's an interesting question, actually. We got the director involved very early on. We've got Sarah Redmond directing, actually both pieces. She's a fabulous director. I love working with her, or her working style, I should say. Yes. I love working with her from my experience so far. I've never actually worked with her on a piece before this, but I've seen lots of her work.
So you've admired her work from afar,
absolutely.
And now you're admiring her work from within.
Indeed. And we got her involved involved, I want to say early March, possibly even February. It was quite early on in the process, but I think by that point we'd already decided that come hell or high water something was going to happen. I was also in negotiation with the venue at that point, so that I was planning something.
There were genuine practical considerations occurring. Yeah.
Very much so. So I suppose, arguably, I just decided it was going to work probably by the end of January. And whether it does or not is not a matter. But I decided that was going to happen. Now, fortunately, it's at a point now where I'm very confident that it will do.
Have you cast?
Yes.
When did you cast? And how did you cast?
We cast about 2 weeks ago, and we decided to go full-on professional route for this. So I shelled out for Spotlight and put out Spotlight. We sent it only to the agents, not to the actors directly, and just had people submit people that they thought was good. And we ended up I think we saw 29 auditionees across all 3 shows. So we averaged about 10 people per part.
Yes, how many cast in the play?
So the play is just 1 woman.
Oh, right, so it's only 3 performers.
3
across
performers
the
across the whole thing, yeah. So yes, we saw about 10 people for each part, and we had a little bit of a struggle. There's always a debate with an audition kind of thing, because everybody has different opinions, everyone has a different vision. I've had conceptions in my head since I started writing the pieces, but we came to a really, really strong casting decision.
Actually, that's a very good point to make about cast, particularly in a two-handed show, because you might have someone who's absolutely brilliant as Joseph, but in a particular style, and you haven't got anyone who would match as the Ryan character.
Yeah.
Or you might have a truly brilliant Ryan, but you haven't got anyone who would complement them in the Joseph character as they would need to in the play.
Yeah.
So you're not just looking for the individual quality, you're also looking for the intermeshing.
It's something that has to be very, very carefully thought out. And actually a lot of people don't realise, and a lot of actors don't... Well, no, I think they entirely realise it, but I think it doesn't soften the blow when you get a rejection. But let's say, for example... you have, and now we didn't have this, but you had a 5'5" guy come in for one of the 2 roles.
Yeah.
Casting a 6'3" guy as the other role is going to look a little bit ludicrous.
Yeah.
And unless there's a very particular reason for it, it's going to be difficult to sell that. So even down to that level,
absolutely,
you have to think the whole time, is this going to work? You need contrast, you need variety, you need people who are going to, especially for a 2-man musical, you need people who are going to dominate the stage.
And complement each other in the way that each other does it, yes, quite.
You have the same problems actually with a 1-person show, but the show becomes the second person in that sense.
I suppose that's
true,
yeah.
And it always is, but it becomes more so, I think, when you're casting a monologue. So you've always got these thoughts in mind, and it's actually quite challenging. And to my surprise, we have cast against my preconceptions.
Oh, have you now? How interesting.
To a certain extent.
But how open of you to to admit that and to have done so,
Well, it's one of the things I wanted to do. It's one of the reasons I hired a director and a musical director, is I wanted to write these pieces and then go, right, go.
Yeah, make them as good as possible.
Take something that I've written but make it better.
Yeah.
Because I think
Which is what the creative process does.
Yeah, I think so. And it's a challenge to direct your own work.
Oh, yes. I mean, forgive me. I don't consider myself to be in any way a good writer, but if you were to force me, I'm a words man. But I'm fully aware that once the writer has finished and put down their pen or tidied away the keyboard, they are not... that is not the last stage. And there are, we all know, production teams and people in shows, and indeed we've interviewed on Musical Talk where nameless writers have refused to let go. And of course what that does, it just puts the dead hand on a show, because the writing is absolutely essential, it's utterly important. It must be the core foundation stone, but it is not the last.
No.
It's not the roof.
Absolutely true. And
you
it's
only
difficult.
get a house till everyone's built it. So.
Yeah. It's difficult, and I'm sitting here, we're now, what's today, July the 12th, so we've got about, it's 3 weeks on Wednesday, I think, or Thursday, that we go up to Edinburgh. And I'm sitting here thinking, there's people about to put my show on, and I actually don't have creative control of this. And this is slightly scary for me, because I've never been in that position before. But I know, I've got a team I trust, and that's the thing that really matters, is I think I'm working with people who I know are going to work for my piece, and to better what I've done.
Yes, but it's another step towards... This sounds a dreadful thing to say, towards professionalism. You're already professional, but what I mean by that is if you always do a one-man show or a one-person show and you are your own production team, then you're never going to do anything beyond that.
No.
So this is the step beyond that. So what I mean by that is you're broadening your professional horizons.
I think that's true. And I mean, one-man show works for some people.
Yes,
there are people who make their entire career and live their entire lives and have, a fancy mansion in, wherever, based on one-man shows. That's not me. That's not where I want to. I envision much bigger things, and I think, you're right. I think I hadn't really thought about it before, but you do it. There's a point where you have to say, right, I'm not doing that now. I'm doing something bigger.
Different hat, and absolutely. I do like. I like your honesty in this. You're talking about the fact that you've given a baby to someone else to look after, essentially, and you have faith and trust in them, because faith and trust is what you must have. Because if you don't, then it'll all start falling apart. Partly because of not your, but one's insecurities.
Yes.
A writer, nameless, not in this case. But right, okay. So you've got this. So was it? I don't need details particularly, or I'm not prying. But what I mean is, you've got a character Joseph who's a little bit of an everyman. Mm-hmm. But you've got a character, Ryan, who isn't a bit of an everyman, is a very much more particular character. Now, obviously, any good actor worth their salt can approach most characters, but you do need to bring truth to even exuberant characters and flamboyant characters. And as you say, this character has that in spades. It's and forgive me, if you're asking an actor to remove their clothing, at least to a degree, even if it's just a top. You will need a certain kind of actor, because not all actors are prepared to do it.
Very true.
Arthur Lowe from Dad's Army had a clause in his contract that he would never be seen without his trousers on Dad's Army.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Which is why it does occasionally happen in the show that they all go down to their long johns, but you'll never see Arthur Lowe in his long johns.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I can draw your attention to the Dad's Army film, where there's a scene where they're all they're marching along a street, or of Country Road as it happens. And it shows the government slowly sending them more and more uniforms. So they start off in their long johns, and then they get their jackets, and then they get their trousers, and then they get their hats, and finally by the end of the march they're all fully dressed. So it's a sort of a montage, if you like. Arthur Lowe's not in that scene.
Oh, really?
The army's the troop is being led by Wilson.
I haven't actually seen the film. I did not know that. Oh, well, there you go.
A sidestep, but
yes,
so taking it back. So you were able to find obviously actors who were doing this, but was it harder to cast one character than the other, or are actors all desperate to rip their clothes off and be mischievous?
I think we had a harder time casting Ryan, simply because it was a tougher decision. Not to say that we didn't have excellent people for both roles, just because he is a character. Yes. And I think casting a character is inherently more difficult.
He's almost a character with a big C, isn't he? Really?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that having, you have to be right. And we had people... now, this is not to disparage the efforts of anybody who came to our auditions, but there was a very valid point that was said to me just beforehand, which is that particularly speaking to a writer, your perfect character is very unlikely to walk into the room.
Yes.
But everybody who comes in will have parts of them. And the trick is to find the person who works the best. And we had we narrowed it down, and we managed to do some narrowing down, and then had some very, very tough decisions to actually finally pick who we wanted, because it was really hard.
How good to be in that position, though.
Well, this is it, and this is what I said. It's like what I love is the fact that we are sitting here debating which of these people we want for the show.
You have a field of the
We're
best.
not sitting there going, hell, we haven't got anyone.
Yeah,
and we didn't do that for any
worse,
of the parts. We had firm contenders for every part.
Good.
It was harder to cast the dancer, simply because she wears less. And that's not to say, we actually got a staggering number of applications.
Oh, really?
The Spotlight account was up for 8 days, I believe, and I had 91 applications for that role.
That's very good.
But I am certain that there were a few people who did not apply, and because of the fact that there is
an element of
undress. And I think there's probably a couple of people who opted not to come, having been put forward, because, bless them, for all the fact they do a fabulous job, agents don't always tell their actors everything.
Yes, quite. You discover something along the line and think, maybe I'm not so keen on this job. Absolutely, yes. Right.
Yes, and that's absolutely completely respectable for an actor to say that, because everybody has their limits.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And what I think is fabulous is people either said, I'm coming along and I'm comfortable with that, or I prefer not to, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And that's it actually made it a very pleasant experience, and I was a bit worried. I was rather concerned that I was going to get 3 people, and it wasn't going to be. It was either I was going to get 3 people and none of them was very good, or whatever.
There was some 4 in each option.
Absolutely wasn't the case. With regards to guys taking their tops off, I think is probably
only ask because I have an interest professionally. You understand?
Of course. it's less of a stretch. You come to a hot summer's day in the park, and 80% of the guys are probably not wearing a top. I think it's something that has to be borne in mind, and I think because he's doing it in a particular way. He is doing it to be sexually suggestive.
Which is more than just taking your top off, of course.
It absolutely is. So there is where we came across the challenge. So to sort of complete the question, if you like, is no, it wasn't difficult to find somebody who's willing to take their top off, but we needed to make sure we found someone who's willing to do it in a certain way.
Yeah, and that's where the acting comes in.
That's exactly where the acting comes in from. But I mean, people knew what the show was about. We actually used a scene, one of the two scenes where, well, in actual fact, the one where he takes his top fully off, he starts to in the other one. And used that as the audition sides. So they were reading that in the audition. They knew exactly what was coming.
From the start, there was no surprises.
No. Some guys even took their top off in the audition. Not everybody did. But, they knew it was there. And I think that's important.
But, of course, you're not just looking for an actor. You are looking for people who can sing as well.
Yes.
That, forgive me, that narrows the field. It always will do. Did that in any way? Well, it clearly didn't, because you said you had no trouble finding, and in fact you were spot for choice in the end. But what are the ranges you were looking for? Forgive me, just
vocal ranges.
Yeah, just technically. You've got two characters.
They're both quite high, actually. Joseph is a baritone he's a high baritone with a high top range, but his tessitura is in the baritone range. Ryan is most definitely a tenor. He sits on top A's quite a lot. So they're both high, but they are contrasting.
It's funny you should say that, because only yesterday I was having a discussion with Sue Casson for an episode of Musical Talk about the show she's taking up to Edinburgh, and we were talking about this very thing, about the way that the options in relation to men's voices have changed over the years, because I've spoken to various directors who have observed that there was once a time when it was very, very difficult to get a tenor, and baritones were to a penny.
Yeah.
But somehow or other, it's becoming... Men are getting better at singing higher. And he's observed that, in fact, tenors are now easier to come by than baritones. Baritone is such a wide range, but high baritones seem to be more common than lower baritones.
That's interesting.
Is this something you've observed or not?
Well, it's difficult to say, because we put in the breakdown that he needed to be able to sing.
So you only got what you got.
So Ryan stays on a top A flat. Like, he sings... That's his top note, but he will sing in that range. Joseph sings lower, but hits... Yes. Sorry, I beg your pardon, Ryan's top A's. Joseph hits top A flats. So we were looking for two very high characters, so really it wasn't a challenge for this. I'd be interested to know, actually, because that's an interesting comment. Speaking also as a fairly wide-ranging baritone.
Yes.
And I can go quite low as well as reasonably high. I wouldn't be comfortable singing either of these two parts, I don't think. But
because they're too high.
Yes, I think that would challenge my voice in its current state. It's sitting a little lower. Not that I'm performing much at the moment, anyway. But
let's just pursue this a little bit further, because I wonder. Forgive me, we are all aware of male singers, particularly at the moment, because television has promoted so many of them, One Direction, etc. But the X Factor and all those reality television shows singing. And the voice of a young British man who sings now in the pop idiom is very much taken from the transatlantic American sound, I think.
Yes, I think
everyone seems to sing with an American accent.
That's fair.
But there's something about pop, I think, where over the years it's steadily got higher and higher. You don't hear bass pop singers very much.
No, you don't.
I can't think of one. You might have one in a group, but actually, the lead singers are generally higher and higher and higher. I think there's this. I think it's understood that as the concept of masculinity and what is appealing, I suppose it's what's actually attractive to the audience of pop, which is quite often, but not exclusively, teenage girls, is about sensitivity, and sensitivity and vulnerability is pressed quite a lot in many... I'm talking very generalistically here, but obviously I think there's some truth in this. And the higher ranges seem to reflect sensitivity and vulnerability better than the lower ranges. And as that's become more sellable and commercial, more and more people sing like that because that's what the people who are doing it professionally on the records and the radio are doing. And I'm wondering if people are sort of training their voices higher rather than lower. This is all speculation.
Interesting question. I've been out of the field of training, really, for a couple of years now, obviously after I left Trinity. I haven't trained officially since. interesting observation. I am absolutely willing to believe that. But equally, I couldn't say one way or the other.
Well, let me ask you a different question about the people you cast and whether this is a matter that's concerning to you or not. We were talking about the Americanization or the transatlanticization of pronunciation of singing. And I've had this discussion on Musical Talk before. You know, when people are doing Gilbert and Sullivan, certainly in Britain, they have to sing in a British way. And there is a tradition of British singing, obviously a very long tradition of British singing. This is a British musical by British people. And set in Britain, I'm guessing?
Correct.
Did you find your actors and people who were performing at auditions, whether you cast them or not, was there a lot of transatlantic twanging?
There was.
You know, will people be singing with an English accent?
Yes, they will.
Fine. So they will. It will sound like.
What did they bring to the auditions?
Yes, quite.
Most of the time, they brought an American song.
How very American song in American style.
American style. So they were singing with American accent. A couple of people did not, if I remember correctly, but the vast majority were singing. But that's because most songs that are out there at the moment in musical theatre or in the big audition numbers that you expect, and I'm glad to say we didn't get many of those actually, but we did get other songs from similar shows, are American. You know, if you're going to bring along something like I can't think of a good example now. We had a song from Shrek, for example. Yeah. Shrek is automatically sung in American accent.
Because the films are, and that's how we know it.
Exactly.
Yes.
And there's a lot of that going. Now, Shrek's...
And yet, forgive me, it's set in a fairy tale world, of course. So fairy tale worlds are full of kings and queens, which, to me at least, suggests Europe rather than America.
I think there's a very odd disparity at the moment between this... There's this increasing thing that all characters that don't have a different English-speaking accent speak with an American accent.
Yes.
And even when it's people who are, you know, you've got a film where half the characters are Russians, but they don't want to use Russian, and they don't use a Russian accent. No. They'll use an American one.
Oh, indeed.
And it's very unusual. Like the Brit always gets the villain, which is such a stereotype, but it's a valid one.
Yeah.
We do get cast as the villain an awful lot, and I think, you know, there are a couple of really Betty Blue Eyes, perfectly good example of a very British musical.
Indeed, yeah.
And you would never sing that in an American accent because it would fail. You just
Yes.
wouldn't work. That's not what it's for. And I think the other problem is that people are used to hearing rhymes in American accents, so people write rhymes for American accents.
Oh, I came across an example of this the other day. I was looking, in fact, an episode about Stephen Sondheim. Wrote a song in 2010 for Sondheim on Sondheim, his own review, in a sense, sending himself up. It's called God, and it's about Stephen Sondheim.
Oh, I haven't heard that. I need to hear that.
No, a lot of people aren't aware of it, but it's a very good song, and, you know, the question I was asking, is it a parody of him? Can you parody yourself, or is he just setting himself up? I think it's difficult to parody yourself if you're using the tropes you traditionally use, even if you're enhancing them.
True.
But what I was looking at the lyrics here are, and I can't remember them exactly, but it only worked. You could not sing this song with a British accent, or you could, but you wouldn't work, because it's something like "the man's a god." You know, I'm using God rather than "the man's a god." After all, he wrote Sweeney Todd or Sweeney Tard, but then it has to rhyme with, he's like something out of de Sade. You know, the Marquis de Sade.
Yeah.
So in this country, we would say de Sade, but we would not be able to rhyme Sweeney Todd and God. God and Todd and Sod.
Yes, the Marquis de Sade. It's a very, very different
very different world.
Yes, he was a gardener.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, forgive me taking it back a step or two, when you're talking about hair. The Manchester, England. This is my favourite.
I'm sorry, I'm just laughing at the concept of you talking about hair.
I know. I have a very much a love-hate relationship with this musical.
I can imagine.
At a physical level, as everything else. But
I shouldn't tell you that the soundtrack of the play is quite a lot of hair metal then. Never mind, but Tish.
But there's a similar God rhyme in that, actually, funny, which is why because Claude Hooper Bukowski finishes the song with "I believe in God, and I believe that God believes in Claude," because he's called Claude. But of course, in American, it's God and Claude, so it does rhyme. But unfortunately, in England,
we can't even rhyme that.
No, we can't.
Claude and God just don't work.
No, which to make it work, he has to become "I believe that God believes in Clod." And I'm not sure he wants to be called Clod.
No, probably not.
Anyway, so...
but no, I think it's... And I have that. I've got blast and past, which you can rhyme in either language. But even... Nick and I recorded demos of these just for our own benefit.
Yes,
and we'll probably use them for the actors to have a listen to, just to get an idea. And I really had... I sang this particular song, and I really had to think to sing blast and past instead of blast and past. Which I suppose he could be northern. But... The gut instinct as a singer, because it's a more open vowel, is to go for the ah.
Of course it is, yeah.
Like, so big, wide, open mouth. And the blast, the pronunciation of blast and the way that you form it is a tiny bit more closed. And so gut instinct says go American. Which is the other thing. I mean, this powerful singing that we do nowadays is informed by a certain amount of American teaching, I think.
It is, and the openness of the vowels, I think, is a very good point. While you were saying that, I was just remembering all the way back to Jerome Kern and Dorothy Field's A Fine Romance. Mm-hmm. And there is a stumbling block in a lot of recordings, which is that it is required to rhyme dance and romance.
Yeah.
And romance is never pronounced romance. It can't be. It's just,
I think Cole Porter does it once, doesn't he?
Well, yeah,
quite deliberately.
Yeah,
but
if you do it deliberately, that's a different thing.
Yes.
But the many performers, whether they be British or American, stumble on this because romance, I think, is more or less set. But of course, to an English ear, the short ah, although in romance is fine, everyone uses it, whether you're southern or northern, it's a northern usage of the a sound.
Yeah.
Whereas dance... If you say dance, you're saying something very specifically northern in English, and if you're southern, you would say dance. So you hear people saying romance and dance, and that doesn't feel comfortable. And sometimes you hear people say romance and dance, and that doesn't feel comfortable.
And it becomes a problem. And I think this is one of the things is you have to be very careful about what you do. And of course, the different enunciations and pronunciations also can make things difficult to sing.
Yes.
Because like an E sound right up at the top of the tessitura of a piece is really difficult. And everybody's guilty of it at some point.
Yeah, of
even,
course.
Dare I say, even Sondheim. I can't remember what I was listening to the other day, and I went, "Oh my God, he's done an E up there," which I hadn't noticed before.
When it comes back to you, do be sure to let me know.
I will do,
because I admire Sondheim, but I'm always but since he has in his first book of lyrics has decided that other lyricists open game for spotting their flaws, then I think...
He has some of his own.
He does indeed.
And I will say that as a lover of his work.
He has several lyrical tics, which are bad English, in my view, which he uses in order to get around problems. And
I can understand it, though. I mean, I've got my problem is that I deal in grammar.
Yeah.
I've lived for some years.
As in Grandma, We Love You. No, sorry.
Oh dear.
A different song again.
They don't get any better, do they?
They don't.
I lived for some time with a English literature master, and you learn grammar when you're living.
I bet you do. Yeah,
you get used to thinking that way, and it hurts me when I come to a point and I go, I can't rhyme that and be grammatically correct.
Yes.
And occasionally I sacrifice grammar, and occasionally I find a way around it. But equally, I mean, you don't want all of your characters to be grammatically correct anyway.
No, if the character is not going to be speaking the Queen's English or received pronunciation, then it's perfectly fine.
And that's where I've got away with it in this, because Ryan doesn't so much. He's a little bit more street smart, and he's therefore adapted.
Yes.
Like he doesn't speak street, quote unquote, but he is a little bit more liberal with his destruction of the English language, whereas Joseph is a little bit more RP.
Yes, I certainly get the impression that, I mean, to use old-fashioned terms, that Joseph is the square one, and Ryan is the swingery one, shall we say.
He is. I mean, in many ways, they could almost be a comedy duo, were it not for the fact. But that's the archetype they're built around. But then, to be fair, most comedy duos were built around a fantastic antagonistic quality.
Yeah, well, that's where drama comes from, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And indeed comedy,
if you don't have a block, then what's the point? There was a wonderful book I read at one point in time on how to write. I can't remember which one it was, so I won't say who the author was. It was one of two people. But they said one of the questions that in these how to write books is always, who's the story about? And they said, whoever hurts most. Well, it's actually very true, because if you're not right, everyone says, total coincidence that this book's about this, like Harry Potter, this book's about this kid that all these amazing things happen to. It's like, well, if it was written about somebody else, it would be boring.
Yes.
But it's written about the person that hurts the most throughout.
Yes.
And that's why you pick your central character. And if you don't have that hurt, then there's no plot.
That's very interesting, because I don't think I would have necessarily spotted that myself.
No, well, I hadn't until I read this, and I thought that it's not always applicable, because people don't always hurt, but they get challenged.
Yeah. But if you use hurt as a synonym for something dramatic...
Yes.
Yeah. By which I mean drama in its fullest sense. I don't mean overblown drama. I just mean things happening to them. Yes.
And there are very clever ways of doing this, where you see things in second or third person, where you're watching the person that's hurting the most, but they're always you know, it's that sort of thing where, well, yes, we are watching this, and this is the person who appears to be the best actor level person, but actually the best supporting actor level person is actually who this is about.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because we've both seen, not together, From Here to Eternity.
Yes.
And I wasn't impressed by it, and lots of the characters suffer and hurt, and many of them die, in fact. But actually, the character who, for me, was the only one I was genuinely interested in, actually, at all, was Maggio, who's the friend of the boxer who doesn't box, and who ultimately is murdered by military police. And but he is the one, I think, who has he has the worst journey, the greatest hurt, the biggest pain, I think, and therefore was the best part. Oddly, the show wasn't ostensibly about that character. He was a supporting character, which I think goes a long way to explain why I don't think From Here to Eternity was a successful show. But very interesting what you were saying. Right?
Well, I mean, it's an element of Schadenfreude to an extent, especially in the comedy. It's an element of natural human perversity and curiosity to look at something going wrong. But I also think it's the source of power. And really, drama has to be powerful, because if it's not powerful, what's the point?
Yes, quite.
And I think that's where I see that really making sense. But anyway, food for thought.
Yes, jolly good. Well, let's bring this back to the musical then.
Yes.
So you've got your cast. They can sing, they can perform, they can act.
They can.
Where are we talking about seeing it?
We are talking about seeing this at sweet venues. Both shows, in fact, are at sweet venues.
The Sweet Grass Market.
Sweet Grass Market, yes. Sorry, I should probably call it that. It's there's Sweet Venues is sort of the company, and Sweet Grass Market the location.
Which is a very nice hotel.
It's a lovely one. It's the Apex International Hotel on, believe it or not, the Grass Market.
Yes.
So for the benefit of those who don't know Edinburgh, if you follow the Royal Mile up to the castle, it's the road running parallel to it down the hill.
You go down Victoria Place, I believe, from the top of my head, which will take you down to the Grass Market.
If you walk past a rather spectacular hog roast shop on the way, you're going in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, the pig has normally gone by mid-afternoon on Edinburgh Fringe days.
Yes, so, it is. Catch it while you can.
I would have said in that very same street, but there's an excellent tailor's.
That's also true. This is I can't afford most things they have in there. But yes, so it's down on the Grass Market. They have 4 rooms in a hotel of different sizes. I've seen stuff there. I've not performed with them before. Those avid listeners who've heard my work before will realise I just seem to be with a different venue every year.
But that's interesting. Isn't it?
Well, and I interviewed JD, the manager of the venue, when I did my one-man shows.
Yes.
He came and sat in when I was interviewing one of his actors, and we got on like a house on fire and have been in contact ever since. And it is my first call.
And you and I have recorded in their bar.
We have.
We met for a morning chat once, didn't we?
Back in 2011, I believe.
We did, yeah.
But yeah, so there's the play is on in their 30-seater, which is a completely modular space, so you can turn it into whatever you want, which I love. And the musical is on in their 60-seater, and that's just standard auditorium.
What time of day?
The musical, 4:00.
So it's a good afternoon, late afternoon thing.
Good afternoon.
Go and see that, and then go off and have a drink or a cup of tea, or even dinner if you're having.
Yeah, so the play's 8:00, so have dinner and then come back.
Oh, fantastic!
Yes, it's 4:00. It's it opens on the 11th, which is the second Monday, and it runs through until the 24th, which is the final Sunday, excluding Thursdays. So there'll be no performances on, I want to say that's the 14th and the 21st. But it runs between those times. Ticket prices are £8. And
very reasonable.
I want to say, oh good Lord, I can't remember my concession price. 7 or 6, it's either £1 or £2 off.
Needless to say, there is a concession price.
There is a concession price. The 11th and the 12th are previews, so if you want to come along nice and early and get in a little bit cheaper, that's the day to do it. I think that's probably everything. Oh, the musical is in International 2. That's the name of the room.
Just for completeness then, but when's the play on?
The play's on at 8:00. It's on in International 3, which is their 30-seater modular, as I say. That actually begins on the 4th.
So that's earlier in the run.
That's the first week, and runs through to the, I want to say the 17th. which is the second Sunday, so it's got the same 2-week period. That is not performing Wednesdays. So the Friday and the Saturday, the 1st and 2nd of August, there are previews on at 8 o'clock. And again, if you want to come along and see a little cheapie nice and early on, that's great. And bums on seats and previews are always a good thing, because then you can go and tell people how amazing the shows are and get them to come along.
Do you think the word bums on seats is appropriate for a show about lap dancing?
Yes, because depending on who she decides to interact with, there may be more than one bum on said seat.
Oh, a free gift, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, well, actually, we don't know yet whether that's going to be a thing, but I haven't made my mind up about that. We haven't actually started rehearsing for that. We don't start till next week, so I couldn't tell you what's going to happen. But yeah, so there we go.
Thank you. Well, David, I will come and see the musical, definitely. I look forward to it very much. It sounds very interesting as a character piece, and I'm very interested to see how that sort of relationship of the two fellas, is going to work through and work out.
I look forward to hearing your thoughts on it, actually.
Well, we will meet again in Edinburgh.
Of course.
And
multiple times, knowing us.
Indeed, and talking about many of the many shows that we will probably see between us as well.
Yes.
But David, good luck. I'm sure it'll be a great success, and I look forward to seeing it greatly. Thank you. Musical talk. Well, that's David Kingsmill there, a well-known voice to musical talk listeners. But do go along to see his show Out of a Lens if you're up in Edinburgh. Now, how to see it is on between the 11th and the 24th of August, although you can't see it on the 14th and the 21st. It's at the Sweet Grass Market venue, which is the Apex International Hotel on the Grass Market. And it starts at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and lasts for a mere 45 minutes, so you can pop along, see it, and then tootle off to something else. I'm certainly going to be seeing it myself. It sounds rather interesting. But if you're still undecided, we'll end today's episode with a second song from the score. It's called The Perfect Muse, and I think you'll agree it's a jolly song, and hopefully will encourage you to go and see Out of a Lens by David Kingsmill. And don't forget to tune in again next week for a very special episode of Musical Talk. It's our 400th episode, when you can hear a very entertaining musical theatre quiz, which I hope you'll join in with and enjoy as well. But until then, here's The Perfect Muse from Out of a Lens.
On a morning a day ago, everything was slow, and I didn't have inspiration or resolve. Now I'm getting back to work, not allowed to shirk, 'cause I'm forcing my lethargy to dissolve. When the creative spark alights, then I begin to set my sights on a target in the heights of my ability. With my camera in my hand, I can go and do what I planned. It becomes a goal and a possibility. But despite the way I'm feeling, I'd still have the blues if I hadn't had the luck to find the perfect muse. Sure, a portrait is okay, pretty much any way that you take it, but to make it something rare, you can't think in the box, must use Picasso's blocks and craft something new with tender love and care. When I'm working on my art, before I even start, I don't have to tear apart the institution, but I need to know inside I can do what I decide and be the best when I provide my contribution. Still, with all the best intentions, it's not hard to lose. If you haven't got a subject, that's the perfect muse. People say that regular creation is key to a true artist's liberation. But I believe you also need one last component to be freed. Then with practice, skill, and patience,
You're a new sensation. So with skills that I have trained and the vision that I've gained, I no longer need be chained by inhibition. It's time for courage to return and for me to learn that now I have the chance to earn some recognition. I will grab my gear, look forward, and I'll shake those blues. Now I've found a man who could be the perfect muse.
This episode of Musical Talk, presented by Thos Ribbits and David Kingsmill, and produced and edited by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2014, except for the songs where the copyright remains with David Kingsmill.
And
Yes.
Ryan's looking after him, and he's basically got that mindset of "I'll get you."
Yes.
This is just the beginning of all of this, and so that's where it goes.
Don't think it
And-
finishes here, my friend.
No, indeed.
While stroking a white cat.
Yes. No, Mr. Bond. That should probably get redacted.